Hey there, this is Dr. Traci Potterf from Indigenous Health, and I'm here for an Instagram Live for MAUI Talk Story with Sarah Slater Snyder, who recently volunteered on Maui. So we're going to be offering an on-the-ground report, and we're going to talk about what was beautiful about it, what was challenging, and what you can do to help, even if you're all the way across the world. So I'm going to go ahead and mix it in. We just had one failed attempt. We had a tech issue. She got booted off. So hopefully it will work again. It'll work this time. So, Sarah, if you can hear me, I did accept you. Yeah. Okay, there you are.
Okay, we got it.
I think we both moved locations, and
I'm doing it from my phone. I don't know why I always have issues from other devices.
I just realized I was talking and not headphones in.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I got really thrown off by having to stop to do that.
Yeah.
Before. Okay, so I'll reintroduce. In case you couldn't hear my rambles earlier, I'm Dr. Traci Potterf PhD from Indigenous Health. I help people find the underlying causes of their anxiety. I do a lot of trauma-informed work. I'm a former medical anthropologist, so I'm really interested in issues of cultural sensitivity and more global issues. So, and then joining me today is Sarah Slater Snyder. She got married, so she has the second last name, and it was years ago, but I'm still adjusting. Anyway,
that's okay.
Anyway, but she recently volunteered on Maui, and she made a post on Facebook that I really loved. It was the most coherent, clear, balanced, nuanced report I've heard. So much better than the media and the news and a lot of what I'm seeing on social media. So I invited her to do a live here with me to share her experience. And I'm going to let her tell you a little more about her, but I just want to say I've known her for a long time. She's a beautiful soul. She's such a giver. She uplifts people. She's an amazing mom and wife, and she's a smarty pants. And yeah, she just has a beautiful heart. And so I'm really excited to hear what she has to say today. So take it away, Sarah. Tell us about you. What do you do? And then tell us a little bit about what you just did on Maui.
Totally. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm Sarah, and I'm an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. So I have a private practice here in Hawaii as a mental health provider. And I specialize actually with teens and with kids. And then I also started a coaching practice where I specialize with mamas. And I had an opportunity to go to Maui. Actually, a former colleague, I was a high school counselor for about 12 years, and someone who I worked with had some family, some friends on Maui, and she was able to go and stay with them, and she invited me to come, and I actually just flew in for the day last Saturday, and was there all day, and so she is also the woman who I went with, Dr. Leilani Ahina. She is a psychologist who works at Iolani School, and Shantha McKinley, who is also a psychologist. So the three of us went together. And I also just wanted to say how much I appreciated, because Iolani actually helped to pay for the costs. And not only that, but they actually also covered all the supplies that we brought. They brought suitcases of supplies for the families. And so essentially, we had an opportunity to volunteer through the Department of Health, and we were able to, originally when we signed up, we thought we were going to be volunteering at the War Memorial in Wailuku. So we were prepared like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to be there all day and to be available and to be of service. Things are constantly shifting there, I would say, on a daily basis. The needs are shifting, what's happening in terms of just what is going on Maui, I think is shifting on a daily basis. So we have to stay flexible, right? We have to stay open, and be mindful of what they are needing, as opposed to assuming we know what they need. And so that's a big thing, I think, that isn't necessarily being talked about enough. So we essentially showed up, and we were instead of going to the War Memorial, we actually ended up going to the Lahaina Civic Center, which is sort of like a base for many of the volunteers that are helping to go out into the community. And so we just, followed their directives. We were able to go and start at the Royal Lahaina Hotel. And essentially, at each of the hotels. So, I mean, there's a lot of good news, right? Which is,
Yeah,
I wanted to share about
please.
that.
Please share the good news because
Yeah, I mean, this has been absolutely devastating. Also, I'll just share. Lahaina is very close to my heart. That's also why I felt compelled to go. I lived there in 2004. I worked at the time at Pacifico Restaurant. This was 20 years ago in Lahaina, but I know and love that town so well. And so that was part of why it's just been weighing heavy on my heart, as I'm sure many of you as well. So upon going to the Royal Lahaina Hotel, we learned essentially that there were no longer, the reason that we were not going to the War Memorial is because, and this is part of the good news, families have been placed in hotels around the island, mostly on the west side, like Kaanapali area, but also there are, hotels in Kihei area and other, like South Maui, probably Central Maui as well. They're sort of dispersed everywhere. But so, these are families who have lost everything, right? And they literally have a hotel room. They were wearing the clothes on their backs when all of this happened, and that's it. That's all they have. And so I was very relieved to see that in the hotels, there are a lot of supplies. I mean, I would say around the island, they really, the community across Hawaii has come together to donate tons of supplies. And I think what we've seen on the media or in the media, is how incredible it's been. I mean, boats coming from Molokai to the Kahana boat ramp, just filled with whatever is needed, right? So the good news is families now have shelter. They have clothing. They have basic supplies. They also, for the most part, they should have food and water taken care of. At the Royal Lahaina Hotel, they had vouchers and things for families to be able to eat. They had a whole room set up where they could go and donations of clothing and of even like technology things we don't think about, like cords for their phones or, charging devices, things like that, toys for their kids, right? So we set up a little booth that was next to Red Cross and FEMA are at all of the hotels. And we essentially had a bunch of toys and different things for kids to just start to talk story with families, to be able to bring kids over, to just connect with them, ask how they're doing, offer some support. And
how are the kids doing?
Well, here's the thing. So these are families that are local, right? These are local families. So what that means is there are a variety of different ethnicities of these families, everything from Filipino to Native Hawaiian to Micronesian to, there are, Hapa families mixed, lots of mixed families. But so kids in general don't typically open up to strangers, right? And so I think it helped to be able to have some things to start conversations with kids, to just ask them, like, what kinds of things do you like playing with or doing? I think kids are very resilient, I will say. And so when we ask kids, how are you doing? Their answer is like, good, I'm good. When we know they're not good, but that's the default response.
Right.
I will say that the parents,
default response,
absolutely, totally. Parents, I think, were a little bit more open with us. And, I shared in my post that there was one gentleman who, when I asked him, what do you need? I'll probably cry when I tell the story, but when I asked him, what do you need?
I'm a wreck, like holding my tears this whole time.
He said, I don't need anything. My family's alive. My house burned to the ground, but I have my family, and it was just this really humbling moment. And he was such a sweet, I think he was a Hispanic man, just the sweetest guy, and was able to get out with his kids and his wife. And they're staying at the hotel. And, so he was actually very grateful. And that was a takeaway message from, I think, a lot of these families. I will say I talked with people there who were, I'll just say they were distrusting of going over to the table with FEMA, going to talk to Red Cross. And what I want to say is I met the Red Cross volunteers. I met the people from FEMA who are here to help, and they are here to help. but they're not local. They don't know the culture here. They don't really understand the dynamics at play, right? And so there's understandably a lot of distrust from local families. So much so, I mean, I walked one gentleman over to the table because he just like didn't quite know how to engage or how to get the help and get that support, you know. And so these families, I mean, I want to say they really do need the help of FEMA or of Red Cross, just in terms of like having, you know, they essentially, by being in these hotels, they do get 30 days covered with their meals, with all of that. So like in terms of just getting started, getting grounded, being able to figure out what their next steps are, I think, and it's, they I don't want to say they have to go through these agencies, but there is support available should they choose to go through these agencies. However, I'll give an example. At the War Memorial, I did hear a story about how this wonderful grassroots organization, actually several organizations, Mana Medics, which is Native Hawaiian, they essentially provide mental health support to Native Hawaiian families. They were turned away at the War Memorial by Red Cross. Also, I actually don't know the name of the organization, but I know there were Lomi practitioners, there were acupuncturists that were wanting to go and basically offer help and support to these families at the War Memorial. And because they were not registered volunteers with the Red Cross, they were turned away.
Were they offered the ability to register so they could go in, or were they just turned away?
I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question. I imagine they were, but it's a little bit of a process to get registered with them. You can do it, but it is a bit of a process. And so here are these really well-meaning individuals showing up to be of service to their community, who these are people who they're their neighbors. They're known in the community, right? And trusted.
The most appropriate people to be.
The most appropriate people, exactly. The most appropriate people to be helping, and they're being turned away. And so I think that
makes a lot of people mad.
And so it made a lot of people mad, and it created a lot of distrust, so much so that now at the community hubs, which I love that they're calling these resilience hubs, and they totally were, by the way, they around like Lahaina. So after we were at the hotel, we basically went to these resilience hubs that are totally organized.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, basically hubs around the community, in different places: Napili Plaza, Gateway Plaza, Honokovai Beach, Kahana Boat Ramp, like different places that are fully organized by community members and family. These are like Native Hawaiian leaders that are really sort of rallying to get everything, receive donations, to organize the donations, to distribute the donations. And I mean, it was incredible to see, I have to say. It was, and not only
this is completely independent of any official organizations. This is just community. Is anyone getting in their way? Is anyone blocking them or running them off? Because someone posted that they had set up some tents and they were doing me and offering massage, and they got run out of a park or something for whatever, not being
I didn't
or whatever.
see that. I certainly hope not. What I can say is that Red Cross and FEMA are not welcome at those community hubs because of the way that local organizations were received by Red Cross and FEMA. So
yeah, someone just posted that you have to do a background check to register with the Red Cross, and they say it's a 7-day process, but it's usually actually less than 24 hours. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to catch that.
That's okay. Yeah, no, that's important, I think. So, but that's part of the challenge, right? So like here are all these, you know, individuals who are basically creating these welcoming spaces at every single community like resilience hub. There was Lomi massage, there was acupuncture, there were talk story tents, there was medical treatment being given, there was tons and tons of food supplies, nutritional supplies. I saw, Traci, you'll love this, I saw the Pacific Birth Collective set up at Honokovai, and they were literally had nutritional like prenatal supplements, and they are offering like free doula services and lactation consulting to pregnant and postpartum mamas. Like such incredible services being offered and given to the community. And that
so
is
part of this.
You don't have to register
with anything. You can
just
show up.
You
You just show up.
You show up. You take what you need. you talk story, you know, you connect with the community. So it was honestly, that was a huge shift for me. I mean, I was feeling so much heaviness, as I'm sure many of you who are watching this are feeling or have been feeling, because the devastation and the tragedy is just so unimaginable. But for me, being able to witness that community coming together and the resilience of these people, that was a shift for me. That gave me like so much hope and a way to focus on what I was able to see, and just, you know, creating a sense of hope moving forward. So that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, that actually really, you sharing more detail really heartens me, because when I heard about this, all I wanted to do was, well, I was actually supposed to be on Maui like right after the fire started. I had to cancel my trip, but all I wanted to do was jump on a plane and go there, sit and hold people or massage them or give them essential oil. Like I wanted to just go nurture people. I wanted to hold them, cry with them. Like I didn't want to like just be in some sterile. And it's interesting because I understand why Red Cross is a huge organization. Needs to like do background checks. So there aren't, you know, there are people who are out there doing GoFundMe saying, oh, we're gonna build houses. We're gonna help people rebuild their houses, and they're complete scams. Like there's so many vultures that come along. I don't disrespect vultures in nature, actually. I respect vultures as part of nature, but in humanity, like, you know, people who will take a decision like this and just be parasitic about it, that's really sad. And there, you know, there could be people in there that are, you know, sexually inappropriate or, you know, whatever, you know, so I understand why they're wanting to vet people before they allow them in. But then unfortunately, so it's well-meaning, it's well-intended, but then that unintentionally sterilizes the humanity out of it. And then what I'm hearing you saying is there are people who are like, you know, screw this, we're going to do our own thing. And they're not being, they're left and to just set up. And wow, that makes me so happy. It makes me also want to jump on a plane.
I mean, now what I will say though is like, you know, you don't want to, just for anyone watching, like you only want to go to the West Side if you're volunteering. Right now, I'll also say that like with the hotels, they are only allowing Red Cross, FEMA, and Department of Health volunteers. They actually are getting rid, I think, of the Department of Health volunteers, and it's going to be a paid position soon, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, the goal is, I think, to have someone who's consistent for these families that can be there to provide mental health support. And so that's good, but it is interesting. Like I said, it's sort of, there's like things are moving and shifting daily. Like when I made that post and I said, you know, what they're needing is underwear, 100% they were needing underwear. Here's a really cool story that is not being, I don't think has been shared in the media, but I heard, so Oprah is on Maui, right? She has a house in upcountry. And she has made appearances she went to the War Memorial and she showed up and was like, what do you guys need? And they said cots. She delivered cots. She delivered whatever they needed. She actually made a call. She actually made a call to Hanes, I think, and is having like pallets of underwear and bras shipped to Maui. So that's happening. But the thing that I know they're needing now, and I know people are working on getting all this there, but they're needing air purifiers. So, which makes sense, right? But that, I believe that's
you want to, and if you're going to donate air purifier, well, probably just donating money will help buy those, right? But if you want to donate air purifiers, make sure they have a HEPA filter on them.
Right. Thank you. So I know that is a lot is happening, but again, part of like what I wanted to post about and share about is like, I'll just say, you know, because their needs are shifting on a daily basis, really we want to, anyone who's going there, ideally, if you're bringing anything, you want to check in with someone in the community to ask what are they needing, right? I actually feel like supplies wise, they actually are good. I think there will be more that they are going to need long term, but I think money is probably the best thing. So like that, donating directly to families, if you're comfortable using that Google Doc, which was created by community leaders, that, and I want to share that there will be a link that I'll be dropping sometime during this that will have a ton of different resources for you. It's kind of like a link tree with places you can donate, including the Maui Strong Fund, including, you know, some of the organizations that you can, where you can donate, Maui Food Bank, Maui Humane Society, but the Google Doc will be in there, as well as a lot of resources for how you can volunteer and providing, if you're needing mental health support yourself, there actually is, I just wanted to share this, Traci, there is a 24/7 Zoom room for helpers. So anyone who's a volunteer, whether, and you don't have to be licensed, you can show up to this room and just connect with others that are also volunteering. And just, again, like to build community, to have a space to feel less alone, because we're all grieving.
Yeah.
And this work is so hard.
Yeah. And one of the things I kind of wanted, and I still want to keep talking about your experience on that, but I made a post a few days about collective grief, and it wasn't even a term I knew was an official term. I just kept just noticing my nervous system being a mess since this started, and feeling like I don't have the right to feel this upset because it didn't happen to me. Like even my loved ones on Maui, they're safe. They didn't lose their houses. But not true for them, and their friends did. And I fall apart over something that happens around the world. People have, if something happens in Bangladesh or Ukraine or whatever, I'm a mess, know, and but I've lived here. I feel like Hawaii, like we're one united family, and it's so hard. And I just feel like there's an impact on people who are even directly touched. So like the importance of dealing with our own collective grief, which actually is a real, those words came to my, I was meditating afterwards, I kept saying it's collective grief. And so I started researching, and I'm like, oh, that's an actual official.
That's a thing.
Term. It's a thing. And so that we need to deal with our emotions and feel, and not just stuff it down, but feel and emote and cry and hold each other and together, so that we can root down and be able to show up and then support the people who were directly impacted, and definitely donating whatever you can afford to donate financially.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's important. Also, this obviously is a trauma that people who experienced it firsthand are going to be dealing with for the rest of their lives, realistically, right? But I want to say that it is a collective trauma as well. I think that those of us who know this place, live here, respect the land, respect the people who, really this is their land, this is their culture. And that's why I was suggesting for people to read about the history of Lahaina. It's not just a tourist destination. That we feel this deeply. I think though that, whether you're Native Hawaiian or not, I think that those of us who really have been, have felt connected to this aloha spirit, who feel connected as one ohana of Hawaii. I do feel, this is, and our experience might be is very different from individuals who experience this firsthand. But I want to just acknowledge that if you are feeling grief, if you are finding it hard to focus, or you're feeling highly anxious, or for me personally, it was a lot of over empathizing. I just kept imagining and putting myself in their shoes and trying to, Me too. But I had to set boundaries for myself, because if I did that, that would drain me. That I wouldn't be able to show up to my clients if I was continuing to over empathize. Right. So I think I think it can show up in many ways. Yeah,
because I was having full on, I couldn't focus. My brain felt like mush. I was having trouble with work recalls, name recalls, total brain fog. This is not something I'm used to having. When I was really sick a long time ago, I had it, but I'm not, in levels of anxiety, grief, weird dreams, trouble thinking, and having graphic images of scenarios I had heard, replaying and imagining it was my nephew and his dog that it happened, or I like the term over empathizing, because I think especially if you're a highly sensitive person, empath, even if you don't identify that way, just if you're a human who feels, which hopefully most of us do, then it's a real thing. And then what do you advise people who are highly sensitive and feel deep to Hawaii, even if they just vacation here, they used to live here, friends here, or family here, or whatever the thing is, the people, or people who don't even know us at all, but they're just sensitive people, what this over empathizing versus setting boundaries. How do you advise people to handle that when, especially if you're in a situation where you're I'll have clients who are the father of a helicopter rescue pilot who has trauma, so helpless because she couldn't get the helicopter down to the people and smoke. So what do you, people who are being constantly bombarded with reminders of this, do you have any?
I mean, I think that the biggest thing is to, however you cope best, right? So that looks different for different people, but I think we have to take care of ourselves. So it's the, you know, the whole put on your mask before you put on somebody else's mask, like on an airplane. You have to take care of yourself, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, right? Your emotional health first. So whether that's, you know, getting your body moving, going out for a walk, connecting with a friend, hop into that 24/7 Zoom room that's available for all helpers. Or if it's helpful, another thought, sometimes for, you know, when we are grieving, doing something that is like pro-social, so that's helpful. So finding a way to be a helper, right? So one way, if you would like to help, you do not need a mental health license, but that volunteer room, that 24/7 Zoom room for helpers needs volunteers. So you can sign up.
My question with the helper room.
Yeah.
So if, like, what makes someone a helper? And like, for example, I'm not like, I haven't been there on the ground or whatever, but I would love to go hold space for people who have been, that, you know, I have
sign up as a volunteer. Sign up as a volunteer. So in that link tree, there is a link that says sign up for.
This is your link tree. There's some people asking about this link tree. So
it's in my bio,
okay.
So they can just check it out in my bio.
On Instagram, Women's Wellness Circle Hawaii. Women's Wellness Circle Hawaii. See her link in bio. That's where the link tree is going to be, and you're going to find the connections to like all the stuff we're talking about, all these ways you can contribute.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, and I'll drop it in here as well, but it is in my bio for you to check out. But I would say, Traci, that's such a good question, and I think for a lot of people, it's finding a way to feel helpful, to feel like you're being of service, right? So
because there's such a feeling of helplessness,
yes,
and survivor's guilt,
right. I mean, so if you feel like you can hold that emotional space for others that are actually on the ground, volunteer and be in that room. You do not need a license. You do not need to be a mental health professional. You're not providing therapy. It's just a space. We're holding space for each other.
Being human.
We're being human with each other. Exactly.
Okay.
And yeah.
I want to say, no, you can go ahead if you want to finish a thought, but I just want to throw something in about self-care and coping.
I was along those lines, so go ahead.
Okay.
I'll jump in.
So one of the things I find myself saying a lot, if you watch, I see this on Netflix shows all the time, movies, whatever. When people go through hardship, what's modeled to us culturally is, I need a drink.
Yeah.
And we're taught to use sugar, alcohol, tobacco, whatever, to numb ourselves and not feel our emotions. So it's one thing to have like boundaries around like what you immerse yourself in. It's another thing to stuff it down and anesthetize yourself with things that actually cause brain inflammation, that poison your liver, that poison your internal organs. Like, I really encourage people, like, you know, we don't have a culture that says, I need a hug, I need to cry, I need to feel, I need to call a friend, I need to whatever, all these, go for a walk or be in nature, like these things you're suggesting, eat nourishing food. Like, there's never, you know, there's a tendency to want to just eat junk, to like, you know, kind of wallow or whatever, but like, there's never been a better time to nurture yourself. Like, this is when we're going through hardship, this is when we invest in the pure high quality foods, the organic produce, and the, like, if you eat animal products, high quality products, and this is the time to cook. This is the time to nurture and nourish. Like, this is the time to go to a yoga class or meditate or do breath work, or, you know, like, just get together with friends and process what you're feeling. This is not a time to stuff it down and poison yourself with addictive substances. Like, even though I totally get why you might think you want to.
Right. No, it's such an important point. And the other thing I'll just say is that is actually what I witnessed at these community hubs. They were cooking for each other. They were holding space for each other. There were hot meals at every single community hub.
I love this because I've heard of it. I even was talking to my mom about stories from, you know, friends of hers from World War II or whatever, where, you know, FEMA and Red Cross would come in and, you know, they wouldn't let people do certain things because they weren't an official something or other. And I've heard of, you know, situations where, you know, if the food wasn't made in a commercial kitchen, then they can't distribute it. Like, if you're not a licensed something or you can't provide support. And so I understand why these large organizations need to vet people, even though it's frustrating and can be very confusing to know how to even become part of that. And I think some people's brains feel really comfortable in organizations. Just go sign up and da-da-da. That seems like such a But for people who feel completely shut out of the system and don't know how to navigate these things, like it can feel like you might as well say, go jump over that building to tell someone to go sign up to be an official volunteer. So people really don't necessarily know the resources available to them or how to navigate these roles. And a lot of people don't feel safe because they don't feel part of like the larger, because of poverty or they're immigrants or because of history of colonization. There are trust issues. So I'm so happy to hear that there are these grassroots hubs, these resilience hubs that are just human together and supporting and uplifting, and they're not being disrupted. They're being allowed to flourish. So, oh my God, that makes my soul so happy.
I'll tell you one other story that just touched my heart too. There was in I think the Pili Plaza, there was a surf shop where they converted the front of the shop to actually be like a boutique, like a store with the donated clothing for people. I mean, it's a very different feeling when you walk into a store and you're literally like shopping for your clothing versus you're like rummaging through piles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these people are grateful for anything, right? They're grateful for whatever is being provided, but just for it to feel, this was at Napili Plaza. There was, I don't know the name of the surf shop, but it's in there. And actually there was, I think, even a kids store next door where they had the same thing for kids clothing.
And it's all free.
And it's all free.
That makes me happy. I actually had just cleaned out my closet and I have this whole pile of clothes that I was like, I'm like, I don't really let my friends rummage through it or, send it off to like wherever, donation. But I was like, I want this stuff to go to Maui. And, and then I kept hearing like, well, they only want new stuff or they don't want clothes yet or whatever. And I understand for like, tampons and underwear and food and, toilet paper and, getting cell communications back. I get that. But like for people who have clothes laying around that they want to like donate, do you know how people can get clothing or just household goods, anything people could use? Because if you just have the clothes on your back, like what are you wearing?
Well, I think the issue is that they don't have anywhere to put the clothes, right? Okay. So yes, right now they're in hotels, so they do have this temporary space, so they do have a place to have things. But literally, I mean, we brought suitcases. We left the suitcases for them to donate, or for them to use, right? Because they don't have bags. So, I mean, literally imagine you're putting your clothes in trash bags what do you do? So I think there will be a need for all of these clothes I believe what they've done is they've like taken a lot of the, the clothing supplies that have been donated. And I heard they put it in, I don't know if it was the Sears or it was like, there was a shop in one of the malls and temporarily just as a place to kind of like storage. And I think they will bring that out. They will allow families to go through it as it's needed. But I think families need places to be more long-term after these 30 days and the hotels are up before I think they can start, even accumulating. Because I know people wanted to donate furniture. They wanted to donate a lot of things for
furniture
homes.
And household goods clearly aren't that useful right now. But I would think like clothing, jewelry, shoes, things like that you would have if you were staying in a hotel anyway. Like I would think there would be use for that. And so, and it's okay if you're not sure, I mean, maybe unless you have a connection directly with families or something like that. So you're not quite sure, like if people had clothes they wanted to donate, unless they like went over and,
There have been drop-off sites. I've seen things for various drop-off sites. I think though that has slowed down because there was this initial push of all this clothing and all these things that people donated. And then now the message is like, okay, thank you guys. We have enough right now. Okay. So I would say hold on to your stuff for right now until the message is like, okay, we need more. Here's what we need. We need more stuff. I think right now it's kind of like a pause. Okay. Good for them because yeah. I love what I keep hearing from you over and over again is check in with what's needed from day to day. It's changing. So keep checking in and only do what's needed when it's needed. And that's how the cooperation, the community collective, that's how we're going to help them get through this. Yeah. And that even like good intentions, if they're not timed right or like in collaboration, then they could become a road bump and a help. Right. Exactly. I guess. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh no, I think we might be on the same page. Or not, I don't know. Well, I don't know if you feel complete about this because I really did. Yeah. I had envisioned this as like the beauty, the challenges, and what people can do to help. So we've actually kind of been circling around all three of those topics a little more organically or whatever. But I did want to at some point talk about like this really
opens up the wound of colonization, of Native Hawaiian culture, and power dynamics and distrust, and like voices in community, and like them being maybe unintentionally shut down, through federal efforts. And so whenever you're ready, I don't know what you were about to say.
I was actually about to just share, excuse me, about the conversation or my observations at the, excuse me, the Kahana boat ramp with there was a Native Hawaiian community leader.
Okay. Okay.
And he, I mean, he's like, I guess, known as the unofficial mayor of Lahaina. His name is Junya, and he, honestly, I was blown away by this guy.
Tell us about him.
The way that they had everything set up, they had a station for food, they had a station for clothing, they had hot food, they had lomi massage happening. They had out all these various, tons of, it was like going into a Costco, but like outside of someone's home. It was that well organized.
Wow.
So
I saw the pictures you posted with the shelves and everything, super organized and intense. Yeah.
Totally. But what was interesting was we happened to show up and be there right as NBC News was interviewing him. And one of the things that he talked about in this interview was that he sort of likened the community to like a baseball team. And he was saying, look, everyone who's on the team needs to know their place. So there is a place for Red Cross and for FEMA, and we do need them. But you wouldn't put a catcher into a pitcher's position, right? Everyone needs to know their place, and everyone needs to kind of move out of the way to let individuals who know this land, who were raised on this land, who know what the community needs to come together, so that we can be the voice for each other, essentially, so that we can share what our needs are, so that we can get our needs met as a community, basically, and help people to access the resources that are being provided. But I really appreciated, he wasn't saying we don't need you, right, you're no good. He was saying no, you're the enemy. Yeah, his message was not that. His message was, look, there's a place for you guys, but you need to essentially be humble and come into this place with aloha, which is hard because they don't really know what that means.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that was another takeaway.
Yeah,
I just didn't feel like they were coming in with a lot of cultural competence. Hawaii is not your typical disaster site, right? And I recognize that there are natural disasters that happen in various places around the world where Red Cross comes in, or FEMA, or certain places on the mainland where FEMA may come in. But like this is a very unique culture, and I think that anyone coming into this space really has to do so with humility, needs to really educate themselves about the history and colonization, and why there may already be distrust of government agencies. And so I think my big takeaway though from listening to and meeting Junya and seeing what he had organized and his big message, what he basically was saying, he has a plan, I think, to build 150 like temporary housing units on land that he's able to borrow or to use for them. But what he was saying is, look, get out of my way when it comes time to get permits, because I'm not going to get permits. I'm going to do this for the people who need this, and we're not going to be able to get the permits in time, but this is what's needed. So his message was like, to basically cut out the red tape, like let's get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and
bring in the
bullshit. Bring in the humanity. Yeah, exactly. So no, I love that. And and you're right, the Red Cross goes all over, or FEMA, they go all over the planet. And this is something, one of the things, when I was my former anthropology, there were books written on this, there's studies on this. The known problem is when even well-meaning people, whether it's missionaries, government organizations, whatever, they'll go into a culture and try to let us tell you what you need, let us decide what's going to do, without learning about the local culture, without being sensitive to need. And especially if you go into an area that has been occupied, especially illegally, like with war or whatever,
then, like there's like transgenerational like wounds around this, and this happens on the mainland too, actually, when you go into neighborhoods where there's like large immigrant communities, like racial diversity, they're just subcultures or whatever. So yeah,
Right.
and how put yourself in people's shoes who just feel like all these Hallies came in and
Yep.
like took over your mother, like your land, and then like now you're living with this and trying to adapt to it, and every day feeling like shut out. And we have this with Native American communities, and all over the world, like First Nation cultures or indigenous cultures, Native cultures, and then someone comes in well-meaning, but if you're coming in and telling people, I mean, just think of on an interpersonal level, if you're going through something and like whether it's a spouse or a friend or whatever, or a stranger, especially a stranger, even if it's a friend, someone comes in and starts telling you, okay, here's what you need and here's what you're going to do,
right,
without knowing you, without understanding your needs, without, you don't feel understood, you feel heard, you don't feel like your values are being taken into consideration. Someone just comes in and maps their world onto yours and make you conform to them when you're the person who's wounded, you're the person who needs help. That doesn't make sense on a one-to-one level. Would it ever make sense on a large scale level?
Well, and what that made me think of is all the land grabbing that's happening as well
Is
now.
that
of like the phone? Yeah. I mean, and so I don't.
What do you know about that?
I did not hear firsthand stories of that from survivors, but I've been reading about that.
So what do you?
So
know?
I can't. Well, I've just been hearing that these families who lost everything, this was their home for generations, right? That they're getting phone calls from realtors and from developers and from people wanting to buy their land, and that's like that is the antithesis of what is needed right now. That is, and so of course there's distrust.
Grotesque.
It is so grotesque, and so
like I feel like you were just like they should be ashamed of themselves.
I know, but like what you were saying about these people. Well, these people, they are traumatized. They are still in shock.
Right.
Like, and how dare they come in and even to assume that is something that they may want or may to sell their land. I mean, I don't know. It's just grotesque. It makes my stomach just like
gross. And I also worry about the people who didn't have homeowners insurance, because even though so many people, whether they had money or not, no matter ethnicity or like everyone's hurt by this, but the people who were like struggling to survive financially, had multiple generations living in a home that they'd had for generations, and couldn't afford the homeowners insurance, and now everything's gone, and they just have this land that people are going to try to come buy up cheap because it's all rubble and ash and whatever.
Well,
they're going to get screwed the hardest by this whole thing, and that's just what I'm really.
And they also, I mean, a lot of these homeowners also lost their businesses because they were living and working in Lahaina, and so it's. I mean,
people lost their livelihood, and then there are people, their family, their pets, and their home and their work. They've lost everything, and suicide, I heard, has become a problem now.
So suicide has become a problem. I think people are really struggling with survivor's guilt. And I think, this really hasn't been in the media, but school was out for the day because of the fires. And so these were children that were home.
They were sent, and the parents and the parents come home.
Parents were maybe working. Yeah. Right? And so we have parents who lost children. We have children who lost parents. Like it's awful. And so that's where they're needing a lot of support, they're needing a lot of love. And that is where I will say, like, I think these communities are coming together, but I think what people don't realize is, so kids, whether, depending not just on their circumstance, but kids have been displaced to schools all over the island. So like, even for intact families who are now, let's say in Kaanapali in a hotel, those kids now have to go to a totally different side of the island for school, right? And so there's so many challenges. I even heard of one family who the school where they were displaced to is like upcountry, like Kula area, where there are still fires, or there were still fires. And like there was a mom who sat in the parking lot because And I would totally be that mom, you know, like, of course, how do you leave your child after that? Right? It's just, it's mind boggling. And so I think like the big message is to, you know, again, it's like we have to just take care of ourselves and the grief that we're experiencing and notice where we are over empathizing, notice where we are like, and set some boundaries for ourselves so that we can practice that self-care. So that then we can show up and be available as a volunteer in some capacity.
Yeah.
Right. Or to be of service in some capacity.
If you can give money, give money. If you can donate time, and full support. Even if you know anyone on Maui, that you just call and talk to them or hold space. And I think one of the things I just want to say that I think is so important in trauma is trauma's held in our body. And I was talking to someone who was, he was distraught about his daughter having trauma from this. And he was like, did everything you could. And like, he was trying to use logic because he loves his daughter. He suffers.
Right.
Telling her, hey, there's nothing logically you could have done to save those people. And and I was like, with all due respect, like trauma's not logical. Like
she's not logical.
Her body, like it doesn't use logic to change a traumatized body. You can't, or you know, like that's not how our biology works. We need to feel our way free, and there's a balance between where you just sit around and you just think about it. And so one thing that's useful to know, and you can add or subtract or have a different point of view, but one thing I find very useful to understand, you know, if you look at the brain when we go through a wave of grief, like if you actually just stop and breathe and feel the raw sensation in your body without a story, you just feel it. It's about like a 30 to 60 second wave, like you're surfing. You close your eyes, and I like to say, what do I need to feel? And then you feel it. You can cry, you can scream, you can moan, you can vocalizing. We're so many cultures that wail.
Yeah.
You know, you can do it into a pillow if you don't want your neighbors calling the police or the EMS or whatever, but like you can beat up your mattress, scream into a pillow, scream in your car.
Absolutely.
You can really like just let it out, like really let yourself, let it come through in a wave. But if you keep like that's something I work on myself. If you keep looping like images, thoughts and stories and like trying to analyze it or trying to use your intellect, you can't calm an anxious mind with an anxious mind. You can't calm a traumatized mind with a traumatized mind. You know, you can't logic yourself out of this. There's no way. I'm sorry. And I know men are taught to do that more than women, and I feel for men who aren't taught to feel or have a hard time accessing emotion. And so, but just to sit there and feel the raw sensation in your body. If men are having trouble understanding why women are so emotional or whatever, or like, I don't want to make it male, female, like gender assigned, but if you have more of a masculine personality versus more of a feminine dominant personality, to know that like you like, it's okay to feel. And I think a lot of people think if I let myself feel all this, it'll take me over and I'll go down this rabbit hole and I'll never come out. And that's how it works. It's the opposite. It's like you actually feel your way free when you feel your body, that everything you're feeling, and it's your body asking for you to be with what's feeling. It's asking for attention and help. So when we sit and we feel the raw emotion and we can scream, yell, cry, whatever, just sit there and feel it and let it kind of come to a crescendo, and then it will drop, and then it'll feel better, feel lighter. And then it may come again and you surf that wave again, but you'll suffer, shorten the intensity and duration overall of the grief if you develop that skill and use this to practice that, and it serves you your whole life.
Yeah. I love so I use the metaphor of a wave often, but also the metaphor that I love is the idea of just remembering that like emotions are tunnels. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you have to move all the way through the tunnel.
Yeah, you get stuck in the middle of the tunnel.
Right. But so this comes from Dr. Amelia Nagoski and Emily Nagoski's book, Burnout. But the idea is if we perpetually don't complete our stress response cycle, if we don't yell into the pillow, if we don't exercise, move our body, release what's stuck, then we get emotionally stuck in that tunnel and perpetually and that's what contributes to the buildup of stress and chronic illness and all the things. But
long term,
I mean, so I guess I want to say that, if you or someone are feeling like you're stuck and you're in just a place that's unhealthy in terms of your emotional responses, right? That what Traci's suggesting of like, give yourself permission to feel, give yourself permission to move through the wave or the tunnel. A lot of people don't know how, sorry, there's a truck moving by, don't know how to hold that space for themselves though. They don't, and especially if you have a history of trauma, building what's called distress tolerance is a skill. It is a learned skill. So there are a lot of tools out there. Know though that, and in my little bio with the MAUI, all the links for MAUI, there is a request form that you can fill out if you've been impacted by these fires in any way, that you can request support. So you can work with a therapist. There are mental health practitioners all over the island that want to help and are here to help. And there's a really amazing groups of people volunteering their time to organize all the therapists so that we can get these requests for support out. Not everyone needs necessarily needs a therapist, but know that support is available. I just also wanted to say, since we were talking about suicide and people who are dealing with really intense emotional experiences, severe, depressive episodes following these fires, 988 is a resource that's available to anyone 24/7, basically a crisis hotline.
And know that these hotlines usually have you on hold for an ungodly amount of time.
Yes.
And people, I've heard so many people say,
I've heard that story too.
Waited and waited, and I felt like, God, I could have killed myself 10 times by now. Like, so it's just overburdened, under-resourced situation. But it is good to tell someone if you're feeling that way. Find the most emotionally intelligent person you know, not someone who's like gonna like become hysterical or who's gonna brush it under the rug, but someone who might actually have the resources to know what to do to support you. Get help. Have someone sit with you if you're calling the hotline. Maybe have a loved one sit with you while you wait. Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And I did want to say something else about completing the stress response is when you had an emotional release, if you can lie down and let yourself shake. So a lot of times we have a culture where we have this very suppressed underlying like kind of European emotionally oppressive culture. There are other cultures that do that. But where we're not supposed to look weird, we're not supposed to sound weird, we're not supposed to be too loud, we're not supposed to be too emotional, or we'll make other people uncomfortable. That's bullshit. Excuse my French. Like we really need, like after you process the emotions, it can be big emotions. I don't think I felt like I could even function until I wailed, wailed, sat on the other, just howled and wailed and cried. I wasn't even directly affected. And then you lie down and you let yourself shake. That's how your nervous system, mammals in the wild do it all the time. They're chased by predators. Once they're safe, they just shake. And you just can fake it till you make it, just shake.
It's a sympathetic response,
sympathetic response. And people like it might think you're having a seizure or epilepsy or something. I actually did a practice with a friend in a park once, and people wanted to call 911 because they were worried.
But you know what? One of my favorite practices is just a yoga, like a lion's breath. If you feel weird shaking, get yourself in a downward dog. If you practice yoga, stick out the tongue, take a couple of really like deep, long exhales and shake your head. And start to wag your tail. Like if that feels more appropriate, do it that way. But I agree with you that the emotions get stuck in our body if we don't release.
And so like vocalization, like just feeling the raw sensations without a story, vocalizing if needed, even pounding or whatever if needed, like moving, using your body physically, because there's a feeling of help getting a freeze. Sometimes just pounding or hitting can like help get you frozen or unstuck, and then letting your shake or do breath work or do lion's breath or just kind of, like you said, wag your tail with your body around. And help complete the cycle. And if you have a therapist who only does talk therapy and doesn't do anything somatic, doesn't know EMDR, doesn't know ways to release trauma from the body, then you might see a different therapist or ask your therapist if they could maybe resource that way. I've known of therapists who have that training, but if people come and just talk to them, they just go along with it. And so you need to tell your therapist, I don't want to just talk about this. I want to from my body.
Right. Well, and just to be honest, that is why I started my coaching practice. Like I wanted to be able to offer more somatic tools from my as a yoga teacher, I know you are too, right? To be able to offer some of the tools that we know that can help, because trauma and emotions they get stuck.
Yeah.
So,
and another thing, this is more from like a cultural perspective, and to like going to professionals for help, which is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of like actual mental health, not a sign of like you're crazy and there's something wrong with you. And getting yourself resourced so you can be of service, or if you were directly impacted, getting yourself resourced just so you can get through your life and eventually again. But like collective grieving, not just like that we all have collective grief, but actually the proactively collectively grieving, like go to the beach, sit with friends, like share what's going on for you, feel, release, hold space for each other, take turns, whatever the thing is, but like get together with people. And we evolved to be in tribes. We evolved to have ritual. You know, there are African grief rituals. There are people in the Middle East wail. Like there's so many cultures where movement, wailing, crying, whatever is part, and their research shows that those cultures have way less depression, way less anxiety, and less chronic illness because they handle their emotions and don't just suppress them and get stuck in the tunnel. I love that metaphor, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for sharing the beauty of what's going on, of people coming together, of these resilience hubs. It's good to know, that, as long as like if you do go there, make sure you have a place to stay where you're not in the way of,
we even brought our own food, Traci.
Yeah.
I mean, we were originally told to bring our own food to not drain any resources. Although I will say, like, businesses are open and they do need our business. So
that's what I was hearing is like, go spend money, like don't take from the resources for the free resource for people, but their businesses that money need you to go spend there.
Yes.
But being sensitive about, finding a place to stay, because, some of my friends where I would normally stay, they've donated their extra rooms to people who are just in those hotels. So like, if you can manage a place to stay that's not getting in the way or whatever and be of service, then that's great.
Or go for the day.
Yeah, go for the day.
Sign up and go for the day.
That's true. That's good. Yeah.
I did a 6 a.m. flight and came back at 10 p.m.,
Yep, that's a really good suggestion, Sarah. I love that. Then also making donations. I've been donating to MAUI Strong. They're partnered with me. 100% of the money stays in Hawaii, from what I understand. So if you're extra irritated with the Red Cross for whatever reason, then you don't have to do it. There are other people. There's a Humane Society. Animals still need help. What do you know?
MAUI Food Bank.
MAUI Food Bank. Do you know anything about like people's pets? Like, are they just in their hotel rooms with them, or do you know?
I actually did hear that they were allowing pets in the hotel room. So I think that people do have their pets with them, those that made it, and I was very happy about that.
I was thinking cats are so hard to move. I'm like, oh my God,
I know.
Okay, I'm trying to end positive. So anyway, so so just like they need resources, and just be wary of scams of people. If you don't know the people personally, or you don't directly know, if it's not like 1 degree of separation from someone you know really, really well, do not give money to anything that's thoroughly vetted, because there's customers out there, unfortunately. And that's unfortunately part of human nature, that when we get in a situation of trauma, things that there are always going to be people that take advantage and kind of are predatory in nature. And I'm sorry, that's part of the spectrum of human existence, but it is. So we just need to be wary of that.
Yeah.
But also, I just want to say a quick thing. I do not want to go down this rabbit hole, but just really quickly understand that it is natural when there is a trauma like this. We become limbic system dominant, and like we become very black and white in our thinking often, and also it's very natural to want to blame someone and center all your anger on one person or one organization. So it's very typical. We saw this during the pandemic. There's a spectrum between all the way from conspiracy theories that are just completely fabricated from like fear and distrust and what we call paranoia, all the way to people who just blindly trust anything and everything. Well, if the government says it, it must be true. So like these two extremes, I think are unhealthy. I think there's a wide middle ground of, yes, there are people who take advantage of things. Yes, there was some negligence, and that, I mean, there are issues back here about how this even was allowed to happen and how people weren't evacuated on time and all this stuff. Just be careful about getting caught up in things that are just so completely on the far-fetched and fear, and they just add to your trauma. And if you research the facts behind them, even if like it's just fabricated, and then all the way to like I'm not, and then going all the way to the other extreme where you judge people for questioning anything. I think that's do. So I think
Right.
we need to learn from a lot of mistakes were made, and I don't think someone planned to try to whatever land grab whatever, but there are people who will come along and try to land grab as a result.
Totally.
So
I would say so that I just wanted to say there is a link to that Google Doc, which was put together by community leaders on Maui. That is, I don't know how many families, 550, 600 families. You can read their stories. It has their GoFundMe information. That is vetted. That is legit. That is probably the only document that I would go off of in terms of donating GoFundMes.
Or people you know personally.
Unless you know them personally. Yes.
Good. So this is good to know. So you can help donate to larger organizations or to directly to families you either know or on that vetted Google Doc list. You can the day and volunteer, especially at these resilience hubs. You can register to become a Red Cross volunteer and go that way. And then you can just get in this Zoom room if you feel like you can hold space for strong emotions or you're comfortable with navigating the uncomfortable. Then you, and if you're not a licensed practitioner, you can go in those Zoom rooms and help support people emotionally. And then we talk about what we want people to call Governor Green's office.
Yes, we can. Now that I'm on hang on, I'm going to pull this open for you. So the one thing I was going to say is that there's the Office of Wellness and Resilience that is the governor's office, which is like I think intended to be a trauma-informed resource, right? And so I feel like in theory it is great. However, I think that there have been some challenges. One of the things I heard from Junior at the Kahana boat ramp was that he has not personally received any communication from that office. He has not connected with the governor. And he has called the governor and has said, like, I want to partner with you. Like, please call me back. Like, I want to, partner with each other so that we can support.
And so as called the woman who's the head of the office of this, because I actually have her number.
I don't know. I do know that that was what I had heard him share. But you can call, let me get the number for you.
This is Governor Green's office. I have
it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yep. It's 808-586-0255. And you basically are essentially elevating Native Hawaiian voices. You're asking him to partner with the Native Hawaiian community leaders so that they can be the voice of what Lahaina needs, and they can be part of the healing and the rebuilding of Lahaina.
So basically, I'm going to restate what you just said, because sometimes people, the first time, they don't take action, and when they hear it again, okay, everybody get something to write with. But they can also get this number on your link tree, right, on your link in bio.
If it's not there, I'll add it.
It's been in the chat several times. You've cycled it. Are you
Okay.
posting while you're talking, or is your
my VA, who's awesome, is doing it?
Oh, VA.
Yes.
Okay.
Know, right?
So anyway, she's been posting Elevate Native Hawaiian Voices by calling Governor Green's office at 808-586-0255 to ask him to partner with Native Hawaiian community leaders so they can voice the needs of the Maui community. Okay, so this phone call, like if you don't have a lot of money to donate, you don't have a lot of time, you're whatever, you can make this phone call, voice this. Just say, hey, please talk to local Hawaiian leaders and find out what they need. Please partner with local Native Hawaiians and community organizers. So anyway, this has been so helpful to me. I hope people who are here with us live benefit from this. I also I'm going to do my best to save this or record it. So awesome. we can have the replay. We can share them on our Instagram or on Facebook or wherever.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting this, Traci.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when I read that Facebook post, I was like, we've got to have a conversation about this and document it.
Yeah.
I was just feeling so hopeless and helpless. So, go ahead.
Totally. Well, one more thing. So, I mean, again, just in terms of like the community, there's so much, I think, being done to provide support. I do know if you are a mental health provider or practitioner, there will be a training that is going to be held on multiple islands. I'll be posting more information as soon as I get more information about it, but it's being put together. It's basically like grief support training for Hawaii mental health providers, and it'll be on Oahu, it'll be on Maui, it'll be on Big Island. And so just stay tuned, follow me at Women's Wellness Circle Hawaii, and I will get that info to you. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are actually here on Oahu, right, who've been moved over, that were displaced. Do you know of any
families that
Do you know like how to access those families, or they just kind of been moved into like family
I
homes
think
and stuff?
I think they're staying with friends or they're, yeah. So I don't know how to necessarily access or offer support directly to them, but I think my guess is they're part of that Google document.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really
You're
appreciate
so
you.
welcome.
All right. All right.
Yes.
Take care.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
All right.
Aloha.
Aloha.